Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Brian. All right, we have Bruce Cloninger of the North Carolina Division Genealogist to read a brief bio about Major Charles P. Petty.
Major Charles Quinn Petty. Charles Quinn Petty was born on September the 20th, 1830 to parents George Petty and Manasseh Camp Petty in Gaston, South Carolina. He was the oldest of 7 children. He moved to and resided in Gaston County, where he was by occupation a farmer. He married Sarah Jane Cobb on December 28, 1852, and together they had 4 daughters and 1 son who's buried here. Major Petty was a good citizen and a hard worker. He joined the North Carolina militia in Gaston County and became the commanding officer. At the beginning of the war between the states, Petty enlisted in Gaston County in the Gaston Rangers Company that later was to become Company H of the 49th North Carolina troops at age 31. Probably because of his North Carolina militia experience, he was elected captain on March 22, 1862 when they formed. The rifle company was made up of men who had volunteered earlier but were turned away because of lack of weapons. The Gaston Rangers moved by train to Camp Magnum near Raleigh, North Carolina. If you've ever been down there, if you've ever been to the Crabtree Valley Mall, that's where Camp Magnum once stood. And joined with 9 other rifle companies to become the 49th North Carolina troops commanded by Colonel Stephen Dodson Ramseur from Lincolnton, North Carolina. At Camp Magnum, the soldiers were issued Confederate wooden pikes. They learned to drill with these pikes. Later, before taking the field, the pikes were replaced with 69 caliber converted smoothbore muskets. Later, they exchanged their smoothbore muskets for 2 banded Enfield rifles. Major Petty in the 49th North Carolina. Records show that Major Petty was reported present or accounted for from November of 1862 through December of 1863. He fought with the 49th North Carolina in the Richmond campaign against McClellan at Harper's Ferry, Sharpsburg, or Antietam. At Fredericksburg, Virginia, the 49th North Carolina manned the wall on Marist Heights. In 1863, Ranson's brigade, of which Major Petty's Company H was a part of, were assigned the responsibility to protect the Weldon-Wilmington Railroad, one of the South's most important supply lines. In the spring of 1864, Lieutenant General Benjamin Butler left Fortress Monroe in an effort to capture Petersburg, Virginia. With both major Confederate armies occupied northern Virginia and Georgia, the only organized unit that could move to intercept Butler was Ranson's brigade, of which Major Petty's unit was a part. General P.T. Beauregard used Ranson's brigade to form his entire defensive force to stop Butler. On May 16, 1864, they arrived just in time at Drury's Bluff and fell back in front of Butler's overwhelming force. The brigade was forced to endure the night in the swamp, wet, cold, and subjected to Federal cannon fire and mortar fire. It was during this fire that Major Petty was hit by the fragments of a mortar shell in the shoulder. Major Petty returned to duty prior to July 1, 1864. He was appointed major on August 5, 1864, and transferred to the field and staff of the 49th North Carolina. In the Battle of the Crater on July 30, 1864, the Federals exploded a bomb beneath the South Carolinians, manning the trenches outside Petersburg, Virginia. Ranson's brigade with the 49th were on the north of the crater. They, along with South Carolinians, held the breach until General Mahone's Virginians closed in that hole. Major Petty and the 49th North Carolina participated in the ill-fated attack on Fort Stedman on March 25, 1865. The 49th took the fort, but was not supported on the flanks and had to retreat. Ranson's brigade was pulled out of the defensive lines and moved to the end of the line and placed under General Pickett's command. On April 1, 1865, the 49th North Carolina, along with Major Petty, were attacked by an overwhelming force from the front, flank, and rear. The 49th was overwhelmed at 5 Forts, Virginia, and most of Ranson's brigade were killed, wounded, missing, or captured. What was left of the 49th North Carolina, along with Major Petty, surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, on April 9, 1865. Records show that the 49th North Carolina started their enlistment with close to 1,000 men. At Appomattox, they surrendered with 11 officers and non-commissioned officers and 23 privates. Major Petty was the highest-ranking Confederate from Gaston County that surrendered at Appomattox. After the war, he returned to his farm in Gaston County. He and his family became good citizens of Gaston County. Major Petty, y'all may not know it, before the United Confederate Veterans was formed, they had the Gaston County Veterans Association for the former Confederate soldiers. He was very instrumental in being involved in that. When the United Confederate Veterans formed, he was involved in all that with Camp 1184 here in Gaston County. And he was involved with all that up until the time of his death. He never forgot about his boys in gray. Major Petty died on January 27th, 1898, 119 years and almost 6 months ago. This marker is a testimony to his status in the community. He was a model citizen, a man who did his duty with honor and devoted his later life to his family and community. On his burial marker are these words: "The pains of death are past, labor and sorrow ceased, and lifelong warfare has closed at last. His soul is found in peace."
Artillery, ready your men! All right, let's please uncover for the benediction.
Let us pray. To thee, our God of mercy and protection, we commit ourselves and the sacred cause of our Confederate ancestors. Lord, go with us, bless us, and keep us. O Lord, make thy face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us, and give us thy peace in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Chad, can I say a couple words before we dismiss?
Yes, sir.
As Bruce was reading the bio of Major Charles Quinn Petty, I was thinking about a lot of things, prior to coming down here. And one thing, back when most of us were in school, that's when they were still teaching some semblance of true history and of the great things that this nation has done. We don't have that anymore. We're told that this is a bad country, that we were illegally formed and came over here and raped and murdered and looted and everything, and all kinds of bad things Americans did, and we ought to be ashamed of our ancestors, but that's not the case. And when we were in school, we were told about Patrick McHenry and what he said: "Give me liberty or give me death," as one of our founding fathers. And they were at a point where they were sick and tired of what was going on in this country under the rule of the
ready to die, if that's what it took to achieve their liberty and freedom. Patrick Henry also said, I am for union, but I am for liberty first. Liberty first and union second. In other words, he favored liberty more than he did government control. And that had a lot to do with the way our Constitution was worded and adopted and everything, and the different states that came on board with it. And we know our revolutionary ancestors were in agreement with Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death, because Major Charles Quinn Petty and all the men that were with him and under him and over him, and many, many others from the South, by their actions, they said the exact same thing. They walked into battle. Many of them were decimated, bodies blown apart. At Gettysburg, there were reports that men would disappear into a pink cloud from the cannon fire and the shrapnel and the stuff they were using. And thousands of men died daily for their fight for liberty. So our Confederate ancestors, as well as Patrick Henry, said, give me liberty or give me death. And it may not be written down in any history book, but they said that. They proved that with their actions, with their words, and with their deeds. But with their actions, they stood on those lines, and they faced death, and they endured death, and they endured horrible injury. And our civilians, some 70,000 Southern civilians were murdered by the Yankee Army, including blacks and whites, free and slave. So we have a lot of history to be proud of in this country, from our very founding up to our present day. All of our veterans deserve our respect, our gratitude, our thanks, and our praise. And especially, we need to make it a point to tell the true history of our Confederate veterans, because there's never been a group more maligned in the history of this nation than our Confederate ancestors. So for everybody here today, thank you for taking your time to honor this gentleman, and in doing that, all other of our Confederate veterans, because, you know, they're lied about daily, and we need to do what we can to educate ourselves, to educate as many as possible to what the true history of this country is. Thank you, Chad.
I'd like to thank Bethel Presbyterian for letting us have this cross of honor dedication here today. Thank you. Now, if everyone